Hello and welcome to the Workers' Party Campaign Talk broadcast. My name's Mark Belshaw and I'm a prospective candidate for the Workers' Party and I will be your host for this evening. Today we will have two guest speakers. The first will be Yvonne Ridley, our Workers' Party candidate for the Scottish Parliament, who is standing for election in Glasgow, and Waqar Khan, who will be standing for the Workers' Party in Rochdale Central Ward. I'd like to welcome our first guest, Yvonne, to our broadcast. Hello, Yvonne.
Good evening, how are you?
I'm doing very well, Yvonne. Yourself?
Yes, not bad.
Brilliant to hear. Now, there will be a few people who will recognise you from your recent media appearances, but for those who don't, could you give us some details about yourself?
Yes, I was born in a County Durham pit village, surrounded by the coal industry, the shipbuilding and the steel industry. So all these sort of heavy traditional working class industries I was brought up with. And I became a journalist and was a journalist, I've been in the job now for nearly 50 years. This is where you say you don't look old enough, but never mind, we'll move on quickly. I've been interested in politics virtually all my life. My uncle, Joe Mills, was head of the T&G in the Northern region. And he really ignited my interest in politics and introduced me to royalty, TUC royalty like Jack Jones, which was wonderful. Since then, I started off in the Labour Party, bright-eyed teenager, and tore up my card in total despondency because of the war in Iraq and the blatant lies that Tony Blair told. And I was very disillusioned and politically homeless. So that was a very bad place to be. And at that time, it was about 2003 and the Iraq war had started. I had come to international prominence by getting captured by the Taliban in Afghanistan. And when I was released, I had the temerity to tell the truth and tell everyone that I was treated with courteous and respect, which nobody wanted to hear because, you can't bomb nice people. So, yes, and then I teamed up with George when the Respect Party was launched. And that was very heady days, very much in the same sort of atmosphere that we find ourselves today. And then I moved to Scotland and got a taste for Scottish independence, but very disillusioned with Scottish politics, and ended up back teaming with George again with the Workers' Party. And it's got a brilliant manifesto that I think would chime with most working class people today. And there's something in there for everyone. And of course, we're hoping to really focus on Scotland for the Holyrood elections. And myself and George are going to be standing in Glasgow along with others. And we should be making quite a bold entrance onto the Scottish political landscape very soon, when we launch our campaign in Scotland. So, but of course, the big campaign for the Workers' Party at the moment is going to be the May elections in England, where we're hoping to field 1,000 candidates. So to anybody out there who's sitting and complaining about their local council, jump in and try it for yourself.
Mhm.
You know,
I mean,
it's
myself, Yvonne, I'm looking to stand in Cullercoats and Whitby itself, so I'm just one of many of the candidates that the Workers' Party are putting up throughout the country.
uh-huh.
But as you've mentioned there, you've got a very eventful past, I think is putting it lightly.
Mhm,
But as you mentioned there, that you'd had an experience where you had been detained at one point by the Taliban, but
mhm.
more recently, you were detained in Israel due to your involvement regarding the flotilla. So, would you be able to give us some more details regarding your journey on the flotilla and the conditions
Mhm.
that you were subject to when you were imprisoned within Israel?
Well, the flotilla presented me with some wonderful challenges, the best of challenges and the worst of challenges. The best
Mhm.
being meeting a wonderful crew from Libya who were all brilliant cooks. I was really blessed because we had some wonderful meals, and of course we were in the Eastern Mediterranean, which might sound quite nice and sexy, but actually, when the Eastern Mediterranean kicks off, it's really bad. And so there was quite a lot of time spent in our cabins, being thrown around, you know, like peas in a drum. But it was a worthwhile experience. Unfortunately, it was brought to an end abruptly by the Israeli military who boarded our vessel and essentially, in an act of piracy in international waters, they kidnapped us, took us hostage, and took us to Israel against our will. And from there, we spent 6 days in a prison with a horrific reputation. It was full of murderers, rapists, thugs, looters, thieves, everything that you can imagine. And that was just the prison staff. That was the Israelis. Um, I have to say, I think that they did restrain themselves with the members of the flotilla because we certainly didn't get the treatment that the Palestinians get on a daily basis in the Israeli prison system. But it was still traumatic enough for me to say when I emerged, I would rather spend 2 months in Afghanistan in a prison there than 2 days in an Israeli prison. The prison
Mhm.
officers were really savage and brutish, and it was a deeply unpleasant atmosphere.
And as we all know as well, your experiences and the torment that you had to go through wasn't even over when you were eventually released. After all, we know that you've had some experiences with the British authorities as well when you were able to return from Israel. So, could you give us a few more details in regards to your experiences coming back?
Yes, well, in we all were assembled. The ones that were released were assembled in Amman Airport in Jordan, and the British authorities were there, and they told us that we would probably have to pay for being put up overnight in a hotel and for a flight back to Britain. And I said, but we didn't want to come here. We were kidnapped. You know, we're victims of a crime. And they said, well, and it was quite clear with their talk that Keir Starmer didn't see it like that. And although he put on airlifts for Israelis during the bombing of Israel by Iran, he wouldn't put on any flights at all or pay for any of the flights for the flotilla, which I thought was disgraceful. And of course, it makes us as British passport holders, second-class citizens. The Libyan ambassador saw all of this happening, and of course I'd been on a Libyan ship, and their attitude to the flotilla was quite different. And he came over to me and said, Yvonne, come back to Libya with us. The Prime Minister wants to thank you personally. We'll fly you to Istanbul, and then the Prime Minister is putting on a private jet to bring you from Istanbul to Tripoli. And I just thought, gosh, could you imagine Keir Starmer doing that for us? And so I thought, I'm going where I'm wanted. And so I went back to Libya, and they saw me safely home to a great welcome in Manchester. And eventually I got home. But every now and again, something comes back to remind me of the experience. Just being on a train the other day, I went to get my senior rail card, and it's gone. And of course, the Israelis had taken it. I can't imagine what use a senior rail card is for anyone in Tel Aviv, but maybe somebody's going to use it when they come back to the UK. Who knows?
Yeah,
It's
I think we
just,
can all agree,
Mhm.
yeah, that the experiences that you've had by the Israelis, but also by the British government, I think everyone now knows that Keir Starmer isn't exactly loyal to the people of this country, and very much doesn't see us really as British citizens, as you found out that Israeli citizens were put first before you, and you
Yeah.
as a British passport holder were simply just left to fend for yourself.
Mhm.
But moving on to more domestic issues, you did mention before in your introduction that you're standing to be a member of the Scottish Parliament, which, as we know, is dominated by the Scottish National Party, who've been embroiled in a number of scandals over the past few months. So, what is the current climate amongst nationalist voters in Scotland, and is the SNP a spent force?
Well, Scottish politics are quite different to English politics, and I don't think the SNP is quite ready to throw in the towel yet. In fact, I think they probably will make up the majority of MSPs in the Scottish Parliament, which is, I think, a sad indictment on Scottish voters, because there are lots of parties now that are massing, lots of smaller independence parties. Of course, the Tories will never make inroads in Scotland. You know, they might get one or two seats, but I can't see that they'll do very well this time round. The Lib Dems, again, they're a fairly innocuous force. Labour is just about spent, and that's thanks largely to Keir Starmer and his antics. And, you know, the people in Scotland have a natural affinity with the people in Palestine, and they can see lots of parallels between the occupation in Israel by Israel in Palestine to what has happened to Scots people over the years, going, you know, back to the Highland clearances and the colonial brutality that they were met with from London. So the Scots have a long memory and they're very good at their history. So
Certainly.
I can't see that Labour is going to make great inroads. The Labour Party leader, Anna Sarwar, hasn't made a great impact with the voters. And he just goes round emphasising how different Scottish Labour is to English Labour. So That's quite interesting. I mean, we call them the branch office of the Labour
Yes.
Party. And then, of course, there's the SNP, which is as dull as ditch water when you read their manifesto. And you said they'd been embroiled in scandals for a few months. It's been years, years and years of failure. And one of the biggest scandals is the ferries. And of course, the ferries keep the islands and highlands very much alive. And you'd think that ordering a ferry would be an easy thing to do. But for some reason, the ferries that have been ordered by the SNP have more than tripled in price. They are behind deadlines, not by months, but by years. And people are getting really fed up at the state of the ferry system in Scotland. They've also, the NHS still performs better than the NHS in Wales, England, and Ireland, but it still has huge waiting lists and all sorts of other problems as well. And that has been under the guardianship of the SNP. So, you know, they've been very lackadaisical in their way of governing, and they were very
It's telling
slow
now.
to show support for Gaza, even though Humza Yousaf, who was the former First Minister, has really, through his own personal challenges, his wife is a Palestinian who has relatives in Gaza, and he's been extremely vocal, but it's taken the SNP a while to catch up to that.
Mhm.
So
Like, I think as you've raised there, that the SNP, when you actually put it under a magnifying glass and actually look at its individual policies and at how it's run Scotland for the last couple of years, it doesn't really seem that there's anything like positive really there that the SNP have actually done, which seems to explain why they're always on the bullhorn about Scottish independence rather than talking about some of the more key problems. But as a candidate for the Workers' Party, you'll of course be aware of the party's policy for Scotland, which is self-determination. But for those who may not be aware, can you explain the difference between self-determination and a referendum on independence?
well, the referendum on independence speaks for itself. You know, it's a rerun
Mm,
of Alex Salmond's. He was the mastermind behind the 2014 referendum, which was a straight yes and no vote on independence. And coming from a point of zero, Scotland achieved 45%. And that in itself was impressive. And according to the statistics, it's looking more than 50%. And at one stage during the 2014 referendum, it was over the 50% mark. But then the three main parties, the Lib Dems, the Labour, and Conservatives, got together and made this pledge, this vow, which was a tissue of lies, promising all sorts to Scots if they would stay within the Union. What Workers' Party thinks is that we should let Scottish people decide, first and foremost, their self-determination, their future. You know, do they want to remain in the union? Do they want a different type of federalism, or do they want independence? And so there'll be a variety of choices. But I have to say that I'm all for breaking away from Westminster. It's a rotten government. It is not aiding Scotland at all. This year, the Labour government presided over the closure of Scotland's only oil refinery. Now then the Greens will be, cheering that and saying, hooray, we need to end fossil fuels. And yes, we do need to end fossil fuels, but we can't suddenly stop, on a Tuesday night and start on a Wednesday working without fossil fuels. Oil creates about 2,000 different products. And from medical fields to engineering fields to all sorts of enterprises, and we can't just stop using oil. Now then, Scotland has a lot of oil, and if we are going to use oil, which we will have to for the next few years, surely it makes common sense to use oil that has been locally sourced than going halfway around the world and using the whole carbon footprint thing to get oil at a much higher price from the Middle East and to bring it back to Scotland. It doesn't make either economical or any sort of sense at all. I'm sure that the Greens will be imploding and exploding at this, but that's the fact. If I run out of petrol, I'm going to go to the nearest petrol station to fill up. I'm not going to go to the expense of getting a taxi to, to close down Scotland's only oil refinery was a really silly thing to do. It was very short-sighted. If Anas Sarwar was as interested in Scotland as he appears to be in the Union, he would have raised this as a matter of urgency and said, we cannot afford to let this go. And it's to lose an oil refinery, it's a bit like closing down a steelworks. Once it's closed, it's gone. It is virtually impossible to restart again or reverse the decision. So that is the closure of Grangemouth is something that that I'm really upset about because, I was born very near Consett where the steelworks were, and that industry supported an entire town. And I've seen what's happened to Consett since. And this should be a warning for free ports as well. I'm very suspicious of free ports and their motivation. Because in Consett, a similar scheme to the free ports was introduced. And basically what it meant was the job creation, yes, but poorly paid jobs. And it's and I fear that the Conssettisation of jobs will happen in these free port areas. But
well, I want to take you on that point there, Yvonne, as well, because as you were mentioning, the idea of net zero and deindustrializing seems to be something of a mantra at the moment, and as has kind of been highlighted in the news for many years, this idea of the Scots wanting to go independent and relying on North Sea oil, but then at the same time closing down North Sea oil and calling for it to be closed down in order to meet net zero seems like it's a bit of a contradictory point. But this isn't just happening on just the national level, it's also happening on a local level. So I wanted to move on to your individual campaign, Yvonne, and your particular seats, because point 2 of our 10-point programme focuses on jobs in industry.
Yes, well,
in that we detail like a need to rebuild British industry. And in your area, how has the erosion of industry and decimation of employment opportunities impacted it?
Well, Glasgow is a great city, as George would no doubt tell you. He was MP here for quite a few years. It has a vibrant workforce, and the River Clyde, runs right through it, and it has a great future if the right government is involved. And of course, Labour are just interested in cheap jobs and short-term jobs and low-paid jobs and zero contracts. And of course, we want to revive the working classes and bring back a more vibrant and prosperous Glasgow. The area that I want to stand in is the Electoral Commission has been redrawing its lines, and so it's taken in Cathcart and Pollock. And these are both very rundown areas that do need better housing, more jobs, more industry, and well-paid jobs as well. As I say, it's all very well saying we're creating X thousand of jobs, but if they're all poorly paid, it's pretty pointless. Concert has not thrived at all under this European enterprise zone that was created at the time. And of course, we no longer have Europe in Scotland, and people were very angry to lose Europe. I'm not entirely convinced. We can still trade, I think, with Europe, but on with a group called EFTA, which is quite different to the European Union, but you would have many of the same benefits as well. So there's so much potential in Scotland, and unlike the rest of England, we do have a problem with people leaving. Migrants are very welcome in Scotland. In fact, we do say refugees are welcome here, and we need their expertise and ingenuity and work skills to be able to continue to develop and grow in all sectors of industry. So while I can see that, Labour's handling of the migrant crisis has been atrocious, absolutely atrocious. But people shouldn't be made to feel bad by casting a critical eye over the input of migrants, because, we have to have a balance. And the way that Labour is going about it is awful, and it's demeaning for the migrants that are coming into the UK. They cut and bleed like the rest of us. They hurt like the rest of us. They have aspirations like the rest of us. So we should really find a better way of handling this system, and try and make people not feel bad about themselves for being critical. There's a lot of people out there who say, I'm not racist, and I believe them. And I don't think they should be made to feel like racists because they are critical of the way that the government is handling the situation. And at the end of the day, all of this unrest outside asylum seekers' hotels and hostels. All of this is taking attention away from the real culprits and looters and thieves in this country, and that is the rich, the billionaire classes who are wiggling through a whole system to avoid paying the taxes that they should be paying. And instead, you've got the government that's whipping up this storm that takes the attention off the very rich and focuses on the people who have nothing, who are getting angry, and they're being told that their problem is from this other group of people who have nothing, the migrants. So you've got all these poor people with nothing fighting over nothing when the rich are sitting back and looting the country.
Well, I want to bring you up on that, Yvonne, because in our last broadcast, we looked at our point one of our 10-point program. And in it, we wanted to kind of show that we oppose imperialism and war, and why exactly that we should push that message across, and how exactly our interference and our wars abroad end up impacting ourselves on both a national and local level back at home.
Yes, I mean, if you talk to some migrants, they'll say, you know, when people say, "Why are you coming here?" They say, "Did we ask you why you were bombing our country? You know, we thought we'll come over and sit and find out why." When we set fire to other people's countries, and our role in Gaza has been absolutely shameful. It's really heartbreaking, and I'm ashamed of Britain's role in this. You know, the arms industry is an evil industry. We have drone factories in Scotland, and I would say to them is, you know, drones are or could be an amazing invention. They could be put to good use. Why don't the Scottish industries focus on positive use of drones instead of bombing the hell out of refugee camps in Gaza and elsewhere in the world? I mean, Lebanon is another target at the moment, and so it goes on. So these businesses should be encouraged and rewarded for coming up with positive ideas in the use of drones.
And before we say goodbye to you, Yvonne, would you be able to remind our viewers of the seat that you're standing in the Scottish elections and when that election will be taking place?
Yes, it's the elections will be in May. We don't have any council elections the same, unlike in England, but we do have the Holyrood elections, and we will be. I will be standing in Glasgow. Glasgow has about 8 seats, and we will be standing on something called the list, as well as a constituency seat. The list is part of the D'Hondt system, which is like a mathematical formula for allocating seats in an election, and it uses the proportional representation system, which will really favour parties like the Workers' Party of Scotland, and it really will favour the smaller parties. It's a pity it wasn't embraced in the British elections, which is traditionally first past the post. So, so yes, I will be standing in a constituency. George wants to stand on the list. And so when people come to vote, they can vote for their constituency MP, and then they can use the rest of their votes on the entire ballot paper. And it's very complicated. As I say, it's if you like maths, it'll be, someone will joyously go through this, and it divides a party's total votes by the number of seats it's already won, plus one, and the rounds can go on and on, for 12, up to 12 rounds and maybe more. It's quite a nail-biting procedure, but it gets the candidate that is most representative of that area on the list. So, we have the best of both worlds in Scotland. And as I say, we need to succeed. You need to get about 8% of the vote, which we're confident of being able to do. And as I say, we'll be launching soon, and I'm sure that everybody will want to hear George talk. He's a great speaker, and so that's what the future holds in Scotland.
Well, I think if there's any of our viewers in Glasgow, I think they know who they'll be voting for in the next election. But I wish you all the best in your upcoming campaign, and it's been a pleasure to have you on the broadcast.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Now we go to our second guest this evening, Waqar Khan in Rochdale. Welcome, Waqar.
Hi, thank you for having me, Mark. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, doing fantastic. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just been a busy day again, as usual.
Fantastic, yeah. Fantastic, yeah. Last time you were on, you mentioned helping with the casework for George Galloway whilst he was an MP in Rochdale. What was that like, and how did you help those within Rochdale during that time?
Yeah, it was fantastic, to be fair. We got an opportunity in Rochdale to have such a great leader in George Galloway as our MP. I was his caseworker with a team of another four. We inherited a lot of caseworks, which were accumulated around about 1,300 caseworks, and we were all in office for 53 days. But we did manage to get around about majority of those caseworks complete. There was various issues that we had to tackle, and what the advantage we did have was that George was present all the time. He opened his office within 2 weeks of winning the election, hence why people felt a bit more closer to George Galloway and his team. There were many issues we had to deal with, i.e. things like immigration, adult care, schooling, housing, disputes with people's lands, visa issues, and safeguarding. So there was so much to do within a small period of time. But a lot of people do still miss the days of George Galloway being in office and someone to go to that was trustworthy.
Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, as we're aware, Rochdale is now represented by Labour, and specifically the former journalist, now MP, Paul Waugh. From a Rochdale constituency perspective, have you noticed any changes in how the people of Rochdale are being represented now?
I mean, to be fair, they really let down. He's been in power for a couple of years now almost, and he's still not set up his constituent and any of his MP office. So to be fair, there's no interaction between the local community and the MP. And also, the issue you have with the Paul Waugh is the fact that he's always voted against issues that the local community want. For example, to cap on the benefits, other issues such as the Palestine action, etc. There's so many that I can name, but it's somebody that I don't really pay too much attention to because he's not a community person, and we prefer to do things the Workers' Party way.
Mm-hmm. And what do you see are the main challenges that are facing your constituents right now?
To be fair, at the moment they feel very they're demanding certain aspects within the community. They want facilities in the community. They've been neglected. They've been neglected for the previous decade, to be fair. And if you look at my ward in Central, we've had the same councillors who just sit in the office. Somebody like myself and my councillor Farouk, we've actually been on the doors. We've been knocking on the doors, speaking to local constituents, and we've been listening to their concerns. This is why it's become a hobby for me, to be fair. I go to every single door, I speak to constituents, and I listen to their concerns, and I bring them back to Councillor Farouk. He's on his own. It is very difficult for him. He accumulates to so many casework, which he has to do on his own. Hence why I would like to join him if I get an opportunity, so he can have a bit of help with this casework. Everybody in the community really enjoys the fact that they have a councillor who is actually listening to him. They have a party who is actually listening to him. They have a community activists who are actually going out and speaking to these people. There's been a big neglect, and the main concern is the fact that these councillors in the ward, they don't have a backbone. They can't fight for funding coming into our area. This is why you see our area, which is deprived. It lacks facilities. It doesn't have any future for our children. Youth services have been taken away from us. Also, the hospital has been taken away from us. Not once this Labour government has said a word. Before, when George Galloway was in power, he did mention that he will try and bring the maternity ward back and also the A&E. But at that time, Paul Waugh, who's the MP of Rochdale, had said to us that he will put this forward once the Labour government has come forward. But until now, not one Labour councillor, not the MP of Rochdale, nobody has said a word about bringing the hospital back, bringing the A&E back, bringing the maternity ward back. Nothing. And it's a deprived area. It's a area where once you walk into it, because this is not how we grew up. 20 years back, you expect 20 years later to be a different momentum, different life. But we're going backwards rather than forward. Why? Because we have weak councillors, weak government, and weak people in charge, which will be changing very soon.
Well, I think you're already stepping up to the plate, Waqar. So I think becoming a councillor, there'll not be much difference there, except that you'll have a little bit of power, because, as you say, you're already doing a lot more work than many of the currently sitting councillors at the moment. But you mentioned there are a couple of challenges that are facing your constituents, namely in regards to, like, the hospital is just one example. But how do you see yourself being able to tackle those issues and be able to prioritise them?
To be fair, Mark, I just want to take you back to simplicity. Hospital and these challenges, we will be making a noise. We will be asking for this. We will be challenging these governments. We will be challenging these councillors. We will be challenging the council. But I want to go back to basics for a minute. I want my area to be tidy for a start. There's fly tipping everywhere. The local alleys, they're all full. There's no cleanup done at all. If you go in my area, it's that deprived that people have given hope. They're giving up on this council. If you look at the area, there was one park built 20 years ago by the youth and the youth workers in the area. Since then, it's not only one area that's part of Central Ward, there's other areas. I want to be a voice for every single area, every single community, every single constituent, and I want to give equal rights to everybody. To do that, we need to make sure we got the relevant funding coming into our into our ward, and to do that, we have to put our point forward. These local councillors that we have in Central Ward, not once I've ever heard them stand up and say, "Look, this is what our constituents want." The reason to that, I'll be honest with you, is because they're sitting in the council office thinking they can sit there and make them decisions. They need to understand they're not in charge. Who's in charge is the local constituents. They're the one who have put you there. So if I become a councillor, I will be a servant to my community. I shouldn't be sitting in office thinking, yeah, these people should come to me. No, it's my job to make sure I go out there and I listen to the concern of this local community. So my aim will be to start off with tidying my area, bringing back the youth services, bringing back the funding for a local community, bringing back issues, other things like, for example, when the housing, they've built a few houses in the last decade, not many, but whatever they've built, they've given out to private companies, which charge silly money for local residents, £1,400-1,500 rent a month. How can you afford that on a national minimum wage? People are struggling here. People are relying on food banks. The cost of living is going out the roof. People are relying on soup kitchens. I've got a local community activist called Shiraz, who runs a local soup kitchen. Absolutely fantastic job he does. He takes in at least 180 to 200 families every Thursday, just giving them food, shelter, clothing. This should be the council's job. So, I want to go back to basics, start off from scratch, make sure I am getting my area where it belongs, and I'll be a voice for everybody.
Mm-hmm. And as you say there about being a voice for everyone, as we all know that Rochdale is a diverse area, so how will you ensure that all neighbourhoods and demographics are given a voice?
Yeah, so already we have Councillor Farouk, who's doing a fantastic job, and we have Councillor Minam. They both are fighting in that corner for our local residents. And to do that, they need more power. They need more people in the council, like-minded people who are born and bred in the area, who are born and bred in Rochdale, who understand the love for this country, who understand how the whole network works. Not people who have just basically bombarded halfway through a council just to get a position and have the wages set up a nice payment plan for themselves and their future, and for a nice decent pension in future. Those people, we are also out there for the community, but we also do our full-time jobs, and we've seen our area grow and then also decline. My brother used to be a councillor for this ward. And at that time, I remember when Councillor Farouk and my brother Ibrahim Ali Khan, he used to be a councillor, and they bought in funding, and they fixed all these houses up and put new windows in and schemes for boilers and stuff. Where's all that gone? Why has it been taken away from us? Funding for youth groups. We had a youth base come in. I was the chairman of that youth base. We had the likes of Shiraz Ahmed, who was a youth worker. Farouk was a youth worker. Everything taken away. Why? Because there's not enough funding being brought back to the central ward, because it's been taken to other wards where it's totally unfair. Why? Because complicit, weak councillors who can't grow a backbone and stand up and say, this is what we want for our residents. There's a resident a few residents that live on top of Greenbank Road. And I have been around there, and for a decade, they've been asking this local council to help them out, because every time it rains, all the water goes into the house and it goes into the cellar. What are they doing? Instead of making the residents eased off by putting, sorting the payments out and stuff, they're going to build in cycle lanes and bike lanes. We don't need them at the moment. People are in their cars. The traffic is horrendous. People going from Rochdale to Littleborough, it takes them an hour to get home. Think about all them people who have children. They have to finish work and get back to their children. Can't do it. Employment rates, they're gone really low. Then you've got things like the council tax has been raised. My question, all these points that I'm making, Mark, I am sorry I'm going on a little bit, but I am absolutely frustrated. The fact that my point is this: I want to ask one question and one question only, is the fact that all these issues that I have raised, not once the local Labour councillors have said a word about it. Not once they've raised a concern about it. Not once they've gone and said, well, look at immigration policies. What they've changed, they're going to affect you. How can we help you? Not once anybody has come forward and said, look, don't worry, we'll be there for you. The leadership is absolutely poor. And this is why we only have Councillor Farouk in the central ward, who actually goes out and listens to the concerns. And, most likely, which I'm working really hard towards, once he gets more help in the council, it'll be a totally different ballgame, because I'm sorry, but this is what's happening. Councillor Farouk is putting fantastic ideas forward, putting many ideas forward for the communities. But what's happening is, when it comes to the township meeting, what they do is two councillors versus one, and they just approve any funding they want. But whatever the local community has asked Councillor Farouk for, he puts it forward. But then at the same time, these weak and poor councillors, they just do their own mindset, what they've been doing. You scratch my back and I'll scratch yours.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what sets you apart as a candidate for being a Workers' Party councillor, is that you've already got that experience and you've got that knowledge and that determination to be able to actually enter the council and be able to push forward your constituents' views and be able to represent them more so than the current crop of councillors that are currently entrenched into Rochdale and the council. But with Rochdale being controlled by a Labour council at the moment, has there still been any sort of hope in overcoming the stranglehold that Labour has over Rochdale?
To be fair, there was a point where we were Labour. We were all Labour. It was old Labour where some things were getting done, and then slowly these policies started changing. Slowly these councilorships started changing. The leadership start changing. The councillors start changing, and they become too comfortable in their little nests. And they come to a point where they were thinking, you know what, it's fine. All we're going to do is we're going to sit there. Many people, they're just going to say, okay, it's Labour, let's just give them the vote. And that's it. There's no opposition. There's nobody to challenge them. And it's fine. We keep going. We keep on doing that. But the issue you have now is they have a strong opposition. And because they have a strong opposition, we are making the noise out there and they're having to follow. For example, everything that they were putting back, what we've done is we've started challenge it. For example, there was a street on top of Howard Street. A local councillor, i.e. who I am running against next year, will be running against me. But what happened was, sorry, can you hear me now? Yeah, sorry. So what happened was the local residents have been asking this local councillor, we want a crossing, traffic lights or something, because our children there's been so many accidents over there. So nobody's answered their query. I have gone up there speaking to local residents and asking what is it that you require in this area, and hence don't forget, this is the local councillor living on the same street, who's been there for 10 years, who's been asked 10 years in a row that please could you put a crossing here because our children are in danger. But what happens is he doesn't put nothing there. And then there's a lot of grass and mice and pests and all, and he's not even getting that clean for him. So what we did is Councillor Farouk and myself went to these residents and we listened to their concerns and we raised it in the council. So once it was raised in the council, all of a sudden after 10 years, you see the Labour councillor running and asking for these crossings. Why should it take 10 years for a query to be heard by a local councillor who actually lives on the street as well? So I am absolutely devastated and hurt with the fact that our local constituents, each and every one, have been ignored, they've been neglected, they've not been listened to. And this is why the Workers' Party is the only party with a strong leadership, with a strong leader who says it as it is, with strong councillors and also strong local candidates and activists, that we will be challenging each and every single councillor on the platform, and they should be really worried. And this is hence why the reason why every single councillor all of a sudden has come out and they've thought, you know what, let's start doing a bit of work. But what were you doing for the last 10 years? Why is it all of a sudden when the election has come and when we're challenging you and you know that we're going to be coming at you? So they have started, but people are not stupid. People, their eyes are open. They've seen what they've gone through the last 10 years. People's childhood is gone, So this time around, they're very worried. And on top of that, I'll give you another example. Just because I am very active, I am going to listen. I listen to the concern of my local constituents, and my councillor Farouk is also on the doors doing numerous caseworks on a daily basis, live caseworks. The MP and his whole team came to Central Ward and start campaigning there because they find me as a challenge. So, like I said, I'm not here to compete on a level where it's not worth it for me. I am here to raise the concerns for my local community, my local constituents, and I will make sure they are being heard because I am not going to let anybody silence their voices again.
Well, I think you're already sticking it to them, particularly if they're starting to run scared and actually doing the job that they were supposed to be doing 10 years ago, as you say. But I think that more pressure on those Labour councillors, more pressure on the council itself, from yourself and from other independents and other members of the Workers' Party of Britain will definitely benefit Rochdale, hands down. And I think that the work that you're putting in also sets the groundwork for the next general election. Now, Waqar, we asked Yvonne earlier about our 10-point programme and more specifically about point 2, which concerns industry and jobs. And traditionally, as in many other places in the country, Rochdale was known for its industry, but of course has experienced significant decline along with, the shipyards in Newcastle, whether it's the textile mills in the West, but like everywhere else, it's been decimated industrially. So do you see the effects of this deindustrialization with working people in the area? And then are there many people who are working in secure jobs as a result of this economic decline?
Yeah, very good question again, Mark. I just want to just advise that Rochdale is known to be in the history of textiles and cotton mills, coal mines, and etc. So we had my father used to work in a cotton mill. So did my elder brother. He used to work in a mill called Arrow Mill. And when I'm looking in the local area, all these factories have been closed down. And because the vast amount of technology that's coming forward, it has had a massive impact on local jobs as well. Because, for example, I am also a senior manager in a local supermarket in Rochdale, and I see these. For example, the people who are sitting on the cashiers, their jobs are declining a little bit purely on the basis that you've got self-checkouts. So it does have a massive knock-on effect with the climate changes as well. And I generally think, with employment, the whole scenario around it, things have changed. And it has a massive effect on Rochdale people, especially because the unemployment rate has gone massively high. It was on the news as well that this, in Rochdale, there is a certain vast amount of people who are on benefits, who are not able to find work. People are out there with families of 3, 4, 5 people. They're struggling to even meet ends, from one side to another because they don't have a job. Second, there's no housing. So the question is valid, but I think when I come to on a local basis and local level in the central ward of Rochdale, I generally think that majority of my people, my constituents, they have raised that concern where their children are trying to find a job. They've gone out there and they've got themselves degrees and they graduated, but there's absolutely no jobs out there for them. So it's a valid question, but it's something that we need to highlight, because these unemployment rates and these lack of jobs don't just happen. It happens for a reason, and the reason is a weak council, a weak government. So that's the bottom line. I know I keep on saying the same thing about this local council, but I'm generally frustrated purely on the fact that if a child is growing up and they go to a school, they expect at least a decent school to go into. And if they say they don't get enough places in the school because they've got children that are in the other school, families tend to move their children and put them into private schools. Now, private schools, I've been to 3 or 4, and all that I'm getting back is VAT charges. The VAT charge in Rochdale has gone sky high. How can people afford to pay 8, 9, 10,000 pound a year just to school their children in a decent school for a decent education? We are in crisis in Rochdale, whether it's the NHS, whether it's the schooling, whether it's the housing, whether it's the local authority, whether it's the funding coming into the area, whether it's the youth services. I seen a post from the Labour Party saying we're tackling antisocial behaviour. How are you tackling antisocial behaviour? I want you to tell me, how are you tackling antisocial behaviour while the antisocial behaviour records show it's on the rise? MP is nowhere to be seen. He'll come down once a week, do a little surgery, 2 people turn up, and he's gone. We don't know where his office is. Nobody knows where his office is. This is why you needed a strong leadership like George Galloway in Rochdale. Hence, this is why we need enough people who are from the Workers' Party in the council to raise your concerns and be a vocal point for you. And by doing that, I promise you, in future, your future will be in safe hands, because 1, you have people who know the area. 2, we know exactly what your demands are. And 3, we will fight your corner in every platform we can find.
I couldn't agree with you more, Waqar, and I think many other people will be seeing eye to eye on that analysis of the state of the country and what is desperately needed to see drastic change in our communities. But I wish you all the best in your campaign, and I thank you very much for attending this broadcast this evening.
Thank you very much, Mark. I really did enjoy being here. And one thing I've got to say, this is the only platform where we can open our heart to the public. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Waqar. And if what you've heard this evening has motivated you to get involved, then visit the Workers' Party of Britain website and click the link to become a candidate. to submit your application or join to become a member. And finally, I want to thank everyone who tuned into this broadcast. If you've agreed with what you've heard, then please share this video with friends, family, and colleagues to let them know that there is a genuine alternative. Let's build Britain a future it deserves, because Britain deserves better. Thank you for watching.